There is a certain kind of person who always taps the same card at the checkout line. Not a rewards card, not a credit card with points and perks. A plain debit card linked to an account they can see, count, and control. The cashier asks if they want to save 10% today by opening a store card. They smile politely, shake their head, and say, "No, I don't do debt." The line behind them barely notices, but they feel a small, private satisfaction as the receipt prints. Later that night, the banking app opens before any other. Balance checked. No overdrafts. No credit card balances. They scroll, pause for a second, then lock the phone and sleep well. Nothing owed. Nothing hanging over them. On paper, nothing is wrong. Their life looks exactly like the picture people post when they say someone is good with money. Rent is paid on the same day every month, early enough to avoid any chance of a late fee. The car sits in the driveway, not new, not impressive, but paid off. There is a small sticker on the windshield from the year the loan ended, and they never removed it. A quiet trophy. The budget is color-coded. Groceries, gas, utilities, a line for fun that rarely gets fully used. Rounding up every purchase into savings makes them feel productive without trying too hard. Friends laugh about their impulse buys. They laugh about their spreadsheets. When coworkers complain about credit card interest, they raise an eyebrow and say, "That's why I don't touch that stuff." Every tax refund is swept into savings. Every bonus gets split. Some to the emergency fund, some to a vacation that is fully prepaid before the plane takes off. No trips booked on credit. No, "I'll pay it off later." Just clean numbers moving neatly from one box to another. Their parents or someone close once sat at a table buried in bills. Phone calls they were told not to answer. Envelopes they were told to ignore. The word debt in that house meant arguments, silence, and shame. So in this house it means something else. It means a line that is never crossed. People nod approvingly when they talk about it. "You're so responsible. I wish I was as disciplined." If everyone thought about money like that, the world would be better. Those sentences feel like confirmation that the path is correct. As if responsibility itself is supposed to pay dividends eventually. Years pass in this pattern. Income moves, but not dramatically. A raise here, a promotion there, a title change that looks good on a resume. The numbers in the salary column slowly increase, and so do the numbers on the expense side. Rent goes up on renewal. The landlord apologizes, blaming the market. It's still manageable, so the budget adjusts. Groceries inch up. Utility bills creep. Insurance premiums climb after some distant actuarial decision. Every line moves by a few dollars, then a few more. The savings account grows, but with a rhythm that feels mismatched to everything else. 2 steps forward, 1 step sideways. A good month, then a car repair. An extra paycheck, then a medical bill. The overall number trends upward, but the distance between that number and what ownership would cost drifts in the opposite direction. Owning a place was once a quiet assumption. Not a dream mansion, just, someday my own place. At first, it seemed responsible to wait. Save more for the down payment. Avoid taking on a mortgage that feels heavy. Better safe than sorry. Meanwhile, people around them with the same job title, the same income band, start moving into homes they bought with mortgages that would have felt terrifying on that color-coded spreadsheet. They post pictures of keys, paint swatches, and weekend renovation projects funded partly by borrowed money. They talk casually about equity over lunch. The saver listens, nods, and repeats the sentence that has kept them steady for years. "I just don't like owing anyone anything." Sounds noble. Eventually, it also starts to sound like a reason they give themselves when the gap between what they have and what things cost gets wider. The contradiction grows quietly. The emergency fund is solid. The car is still paid off. There are no sleepless nights worrying about collectors or due dates. Yet somehow the horizon is not expanding, it is shrinking. The numbers in their account increase slower than the numbers on the listings they scroll through on Sunday afternoons. Interest on savings shows up as a few extra dollars. Interest on property prices shows up as entire paychecks of difference year after year. The plan was to stay safe until there was enough to take a step forward without risk. Each year the step needed gets taller. Avoiding debt feels like walking around a city refusing to step onto any bus, train, or ride that doesn't accept cash up front. So every distance is covered on foot. The legs get stronger. The pride builds. The skyline, however, doesn't move any closer. The invisible cost of that choice doesn't send bills in the mail. It looks like the apartment that was affordable 5 years ago now renting for what a mortgage payment might have been. It looks like a savings account that never quite overtakes the curve of rising prices. It is like pouring water carefully into a bucket with a small hole near the bottom. disciplined, continuous, and strangely never as full as it should be. Object, bucket. It is like standing on a train platform with a valid ticket in hand, watching train after train leave because the perfect, completely risk-free carriage never arrives. Object, train platform. It is like refusing to use a sturdy bridge across a river, choosing instead to wade through chest-deep water every day to avoid trusting anything built by someone else. Object, bridge. It is like climbing 20 flights of stairs, step by careful step, while an elevator doors open and close nearby, never used because moving that fast feels unearned. Object, elevator. It is like staring at an empty field through multiple planting seasons, waiting until there is enough certainty about the weather to plant every seed with zero chance of loss. Object, field. In each picture, nothing dramatic happens at once. No collapse, no disaster. Just time moving. Effort, applied carefully in the smallest possible circle. Inside, the script playing in their head hasn't changed very much. I'm being responsible. I'm not like those people who get in over their heads. At least I'm safe. They remember relatives drowning in credit card balances, maybe a foreclosure, maybe a bankruptcy. They promised themselves they would never repeat that story. So they say yes to discipline and no to leverage in all its forms. The first few years this feels like a clean escape. No balance transfers. No hiding statements. No shame. Then the comparisons begin, slowly, uninvited. Two colleagues start at the same time on the same salary. One uses a loan to finish a qualification faster, switching into a higher-paying role sooner. The other refuses any new obligation, paying cash for night classes one semester at a time, stretching the process out until the role has already been filled by someone else. The person who avoided debt points to their stable account and says, "I'm fine." They're fine. They're also in the same place. The inner dialogue gets more complicated. If I've done everything right, why does this feel stuck? If I'm so careful, why does everything important still feel just out of reach? I earn more than I did years ago, but it doesn't feel like it. They open their banking app more often as if the numbers might have changed because they checked. They play with calculators online, adding their savings rate, their income, and the expected returns. The final number appears on the screen with an age attached to it, and they close the window faster than they opened it. The mind reaches for comfort. At least I won't lose it all. At least I'll never be one of those stories. Slow and steady wins the race. But the race they are running doesn't have a finish line drawn by their discipline. It has one drawn by inflation, by asset prices, by the simple math of who owns and who rents, who builds and who waits. They notice people who are not earning significantly more, but whose lives bend differently. A friend with a mortgage and a side business funded partly by a line of credit. A cousin who took on a loan to buy into a partnership instead of saving in cash for another decade. None of them look reckless. They simply accepted owing money as a tool, not a moral failure. For the saver, this is where the internal breakdown begins. "I don't do debt" is no longer just a rule. It is part of how they describe themselves, part of what makes them feel like the responsible one in the room. Questioning it feels less like adjusting a strategy and more like threatening who they are. So they tighten the budget further. More coupons, more price checks, more careful tracking. They cut around the edges, hoping the gap between effort and outcome will finally close if the numbers are precise enough. The feeling that time is slipping doesn't care about the decimals in the spreadsheet. At the same income level, small differences in thinking start to split into very different lives. Two people earning the same salary in their late 20s. One keeps rent low, drives a paid-off used car, and funnels every extra dollar into a savings account, waiting until there is enough to buy without feeling stretched. The other takes a mortgage at a number that makes their stomach tighten a little, moving into a modest place with a payment they can meet but that demands attention. 5 years later, the renter has tens of thousands in cash and nothing owed. The owner has a similar amount of equity, a loan balance that still exists, and a property that moved up every year while the savings rate on the account stayed flat. 10 years in, the saver upgrades the paid-off car once in cash to avoid financing. The balance dips and rebuilds. The other uses a car loan with a fixed payment, keeping most of the cash intact to buy a small rental property with a mortgage attached to it. Both handle their obligations on time. One watches a second line of income appear from rent checks, imperfect but real. The other watches their paycheck remain the only source filling the bucket. 20 years in, both have avoided the kind of disasters that made their parents whisper. No defaults, no collectors. The first has a house finally purchased after years of waiting, bought with a much larger portion of their working years already behind them, and a retirement account funded cautiously. The second has lived with debt as a constant companion, not as a crisis but as a lever. Mortgages partly paid down by tenants, business loans repaid by cash flows, original risks now baked into a base that throws off options. Nothing dramatic separated them in any single year. But at the end of those years the charts look different. One line slopes gradually, matching the slow increase in a savings balance. The other bends more sharply, pulled upward by assets that were controlled long before they could have been bought in cash. On spreadsheets, both look like they managed money. One managed not to owe. The other managed to own. The person who built an identity around avoiding debt still sits at their kitchen table many evenings, logging expenses and feeling relief as every column balances to zero. Their life is orderly, predictable, contained. Across town, someone with the same starting point signs another renewal for a tenant, walks through a property that has doubled in price over a decade, or reviews a business account that once began with a loan that made everyone around them nervous. Their life has more moving parts, more lines on the statement, more numbers that could, in theory, go wrong. The structure they built absorbs that noise because of decisions made years earlier, when saying yes to owing money looked unnecessary. In both lives, nights are quiet. Bills are paid. No headlines are written. Yet the distance between what each can choose has widened enough to feel like two different worlds. In a meeting room, someone close to retirement listens as a younger colleague talks casually about their third property, acquired with financing that would have once sounded reckless. The older person's account shows decades of careful saving, no missed payments and no black marks. The projection on the advisor's screen displays two paths. One where work continues longer than planned, and one that would have required larger owned assets years ago. Only one of those paths is still available. There is no loud moment where any of this announces itself. Just a series of tiny preferences played out over time. A preference for never owing even if it meant never controlling. A preference for safety defined as stillness, in a system that quietly rewards movement. Some lives end up being a record of what was protected. Others become a record of what was acquired, built, or controlled, often by accepting obligations that once looked uncomfortable. From a distance, the habit of avoiding debt entirely can look almost like a luxury. The luxury of never stepping onto the bridge, never boarding the train, never touching the elevator. The luxury of arriving later, with less, but with the comfort of knowing nothing was ever owed along the way. On a long enough timeline, when the accounts are printed side by side, the absence of debt leaves a clean column. The absence of ownership leaves a different kind of empty space. Between those two empties, which one actually costs more?